Nate, I was just thinking last night how how best to start this. I was like, how do I describe Nate Cain? But really,
All
the
lies, man. All lies, man.
the thing that really just came to mind for me, and what I'm excited to be a part of sharing your story today is just I think you just love others so well, and in addition to that, you seem to understand and empathize with people from all different walks of life. And that's something that I super just am so amazed by because it just seems like that's so rare to find nowadays.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think it's rare to find in men, especially these days.
Yeah.
And that's what I really am excited about having you here for, is because I think you have such a unique story to share.
Yeah, thanks, man.
And so I just would be interested to hear, where does that kind of come from? How did you get that ability to understand and empathize with people so well? Where do you think that comes from for you?
Honestly, I think like my journey with even being a special educator or even being someone I've always kind of been the guy to look out for somebody else. A lot of my friends growing up were friends that we were super close, but they may not have had a lot of friends. Like my core group of friends, we were really close. We didn't have tons of friends growing up, but even like in high school, one of my closest friends was a person named Kevin, and he had Down syndrome. And I think I don't know why I was attracted to him. I think he was just a crazy, authentic person. I think he was just a guy that he was himself, and I didn't have to work through different things to really know who he was. And so I think my whole life I've just kind of been drawn to people of different walks. But also I think God gives you really awesome people in your life. And I think I've just kind of learned from, my mom, who's a career nurse, my sisters who are career nurses, my dad's, served in our church since I can remember. So I think I've just kind of grown up with people around me who have shown me that path too.
Right.
So yeah.
So I would imagine it also has a lot to do with how you grew up. So talk about how you grew up. Small town,
For sure.
Walford, Iowa.
Walford, Iowa.
Okay,
yeah.
I got it
Yeah,
right. That's good.
It's like you take 80 east,
Okay.
about 4 hours. You get off at this little stop called Amana Colonies. You can stop in Amana. This will be a colony, seriously. The Amana Colonies, there's 3 stops. And then you can stop in Amana it's a German settlement. You can get a good sausage there, or grab some wine, and then you can come into Walford.
Just have a good time.
It's
Yep.
Highway 151, straight through.
Okay.
And Lil, if you blink driving through Walford, you'll see the Angle Inn, which has the best tenderloins in the state of Iowa.
Okay.
You can drive past that. You'll see an abandoned, old post office that no longer is in use. You'll see old train tracks. You turn left at a giant white apartment complex, and my house is the next house on the left.
Yeah.
And it's got one stop sign in town. And I grew up in Walford. There was about 300 people there. Now it's a little bigger. Now it's probably about 800, maybe 900 people there.
Mm-hmm.
But I grew up. I have an amazing family. My dad is, if I could be one person as I get older, it'd be my father. He has he's been a father who puts his family first, puts his kids first. And my mom is the same way. So I grew up to a great family. I have a twin brother, Brett. I have a sister, Sarah, who actually lives here in Omaha, and she works in children's. And my sister, Lindsay, is a nurse as well in Waterloo, Iowa.
Okay.
So I grew up grew up Catholic, St. Pat's Catholic Church. So that was not in Walford. So we had a bunch of small towns.
It wasn't big enough for
Exactly. So we had a bunch of small towns where I grew up. You had Walford, Fairfax, Swisher, Shreveville, all these small towns. We all kind of knew each other. There wasn't really rivalries between our small towns. So our Catholic church, St. Pat's, was an old, red brick, tall steeple church. Green felt stairs. I can still see myself walking up these stairs.
I know exactly what it looks like. Yeah.
My dad was with Knights of Columbus. We'd always be out there, taking donations for Knights of Columbus.
Mm-hmm.
So Fairfax was where, and so the St. Pat's Church is right on the corner. You got the Star Bar right by it, where my grandpa would go and play cards after church. And so it was just it was just small town at its finest. I mean, amazing people. Yeah.
So was faith kind of a important thing to you at that time? Was it important to your family growing up, or how did that kind of play out as you grew up in
Yeah.
Walford and then moving out here to Omaha for college and stuff?
Yeah. So so faith was a big part of our I guess our rhythm, so to speak. We went to CCD every Wednesday. We went to church every Sunday, never missed. We usually were there at the 10 o'clock service. We tried the 8 o'clock service every once in a while. We just couldn't get up. We were 4 kids at the house. You can't really get there. But so we did all of that. And I'll call it like a rhythm, so to speak, just because I loved growing up in the Catholic Church, but I learned a lot from the Catholic Church. But I don't know for sure if I really truly experienced authentically what it meant to be a follower of Jesus through the Catholic Church. As a kid, I prayed. I did all the things that kind of I was asked to do. We prayed as a family. We gave, we tithed, all of that stuff that you're supposed to do. But I think that was just kind of for me at the point, in my life as a middle schooler and as a high schooler, it was more of a checklist system, so to speak, to where I was just kind of going through the motions, learning about First Communion, learning about confession and all these different things that I was asked to do as a follower of Jesus. And so I think I can't tell you the exact year, but it was my age. I was probably 14 or 15, and it was so wild. It was actually there was a 3-day mini series. It was the life of Jesus, and it was this visual 3-day event. I guess I'm not sure what even channel it was on. But it was just me alone in my basement. This usually we're upstairs outside, and I was just watching this mini series in my basement, and it was the life of Jesus in 3 nights. And on the last night, it was just this visual representation of the gospel. Jesus' death, resurrection. I had never seen before in that way. I had read about it in CCD. We had talked about it in CCD, but I had never experienced the feeling of actually knowing what Christ had done for me with his death and resurrection, and just seeing it in that powerful way. So in that moment, I felt this kind of this urging. I definitely went in my room. I prayed. And I think that was the first time where I actually knew that God, my sin did this. I kind of understood that how great that penalty was. Growing up Catholic, I'd always seen the cross of Jesus, in the church, in tons of different places, but I never really grasped it until that moment. I think I was 14 or 15.
Okay.
But then, growing up in high school, we played athletics. My brother Brett and I, we both played all the sports we could. Wound up at UNO for college. So 2001, I left the good old city of Walford, Iowa, I guess.
You couldn't stay and make a life there, you don't think?
Right? Just farm, that'd been awesome. That'd been awesome.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
And I'll say farming is a big deal in Walford, and those guys work their tails off. So
absolutely.
I probably wouldn't have made it.
Yeah.
So I came to UNO in 2001. I majored in elementary education, and my first experience at a practicum as an elementary educator. So they send us out on practicums where you go to a classroom and you observe you get to lead a part of a lesson. And I was in a classroom with some students who had Down syndrome, and it was the busiest day of my life. And that teacher was so organized. I realized right then and there that I am not this organized. There's no way I can pull this off for a career being an elementary educator. So if there's any elementary teachers out there, kudos to you guys, because
there's a lot of them.
You have a job that I could not do. So I switched to secondary, and so I went to college, UNO, for 4 years.
For football, right?
For football.
Yep.
Yep. I played ball. I was 6'5", 300 pounds. I would sweat walking.
300 pounds.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I would sweat walking to classes in the wintertime. It was brutal. It was.
So
I was glad to lose it.
Yeah. So what was life like for you in college as well? I mean, how did relationships and friendships, stuff like that? How did that kind of play out for you in college? Yeah.
Well, I mean, the football culture. I kind of was living at the time. I definitely met some amazing friends through football. I've got a core group of 4 or 5 guys that I talk to probably every day, just from football. In that culture in college, you get kind of wrapped up in parties, and there's parties where there's drinking and there's things going on that at the time I probably shouldn't have been doing, but I was. And then my freshman summer in college, I met an amazing person named Jody Tobiasen, and actually we dated all throughout college. Freshman summer through, gosh, I'm losing my mind here. Freshman summer through almost her graduation. And so the backstory here, I can talk about this forever, but backstory with Jody is that, so when she was 18, Jody left. I didn't know her yet. She left for a mission trip to Brazil, and she came back and she felt this mass or this thing in her stomach. She didn't know what it was, and so she got back home from her mission trip and told her mom about it, and they went to Rapid City. They were from Shatter, Nebraska, and they went to Rapid City for an appointment and found out that she had ovarian cancer. And so at that time she had an ovary removed, hoping to still have a kid someday. And then we dated for 3.5 years, and then we found out that the cancer had returned. And so I just, it wasn't possible for me to play football anymore and support Jody. So I kind of cut that last year off, and Jody, we were at the med center, and Jody took her chemo, and she fought it. And November, we got married October 15th of that year, and then she died November 26th. So we were married for, how long is that anyway?
A couple weeks.
Yeah, a couple weeks.
Yeah.
But just, I don't know, sorry.
No, that's fine.
I learned a great deal about people through that experience. I learned a great deal about, like Jody, for example, when ovarian cancer is such a brutal disease, it's such a brutal thing to go through. And watching Jody do it with such grace and such just confidence in her faith was something that I'll never forget. She, one chemo wouldn't work, and you'd move to the next chemo, which was a little bit, the side effects were a little harsher, and then that chemo wouldn't work. So the doctor would try another level of chemo, which was harsher. And at one point in Jody's journey through this whole thing, the chemo would cause her skin to burn, and she'd have to wear ice gloves around her hands and her extremities because the chemo was just destroying her, in an attempt to kill the cancer. But she was relentless, and she was, I'm going to beat this thing. And she was just a definition of a fighter, when it comes to just trying to live.
I can't imagine. Yeah. I can't imagine what that's like. I'm actually the pastor that was the lead pastor of the church I was a part of in college, which is the time when I found my own faith in Jesus and put my faith in him, and I owe such a huge debt to him for that. He's actually going through a cancer battle right now, and so I can't imagine having your wife go through that, because for me, someone that's I'm not even blood related to, it's so hard. And seeing his wife go through that and having her tell me like how hard it is for her to just stay optimistic and stay hopeful, and just simple things like, she's been a pastor's wife her whole life. Like, she didn't even know what bills needed to be paid and when, because Steve just always took care of that. And just little things like that you have to figure out in the midst of that you don't even think of. And so I'd just be interested to hear from you, because I think this is something that I've struggled with over the last couple of months, but from your perspective, I'd be interested to hear, like, were you questioning God at that time? Were you upset about, like, why her? Like, why not put that on me? That kind of thing. Like, did you have those kind of thoughts at that time? Yeah. How'd you deal with that?
Not well.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not well. I mean, I definitely questioned. There was a lot of pain there, and I think that I can remember just while Jody was in the hospital, she'd be asleep, in our room at UNMC, and I would just pray, like, give it to me, take it away. And I would 100%. I had faith that God would do that, but at the end of the day, He didn't, and I was really lost in that. Like, why did He not do that for me? And it takes years of God healing you. It takes years of relying on Him when you don't have a lot to rely on outside of your family. And now that I have, now I'm married to a beautiful, amazing wife. I have 3 amazing children, and looking back on that, wouldn't trade this experience for anything. I think that what Jody taught me has made me a better husband to my wife, Megan. And I think without Jody in my life, I wouldn't be the man I am today. Did I question God in that pain? For sure. But I also believe that He was preparing me for something greater. And I think we all marry up. Any guy that marries a lady, we always marry up. And I think that my wife Megan is no exception. She is someone that I do not deserve, but I'm grateful to have.
Yeah, so let's shift gears a little bit and talk more about that. How did you and Megan meet? When did that happen?
Yeah.
How did that all come about for you guys?
Yeah. So it was my birthday. My brother Brett and I turned 30. We were downtown celebrating with friends, dancing, and we were.
Yeah.
Where were we at? We're at
I think you mentioned Dubliner.
Yeah, we're at the Dubliner. It's a bar on 10th and Jackson. We were just kind of having a great time. I think we're like a quarter Irish, so that makes sense, right? I'm just kidding.
When you walk in,
exactly.
Yeah.
It's my home, right?
Yeah.
But yes, we were dancing, celebrating. Brett had some buddies. I had some friends from college, and so my good friend was dating one of Megan's good friends, and so Megan was out and about celebrating her sister's graduation, I want to say, and so she came and we kind of just danced. And of course, my dancing abilities are just amazing. So I think I just
that was it.
I slowed time down for her, and she just was like, "This guy, he's an amazing dancer. What else is he?" And so she just locked it in.
He'll make an amazing
really,
dad
you'll
too.
tell her. She'll, if she were here, she'd run and be like, "No, wait a second." I probably stepped on her feet. I'm sure she has bruises to this day still, but no, we had a great time, and we just talked at the table forever, and you just instantly kind of click with someone that and you just have fun. And so I think. Megan will tell you that I was not a gentleman about calling her back. I think I waited 2.5 weeks to call her back. Went to a movie. Our first movie was classic. It was Abraham Lincoln Vampire Slayer, actually. A great movie to pick for your first date with your future wife.
Yeah.
Don't ever do that, okay?
I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah. But yeah, so we clicked. We had just a brunch the next day, and the rest is history.
And now you have twins, right?
Yep.
And then your little guy Toby, right?
Yeah. So Eli and Emma are our twins, soon to be 5. Their birthday is in May, and then Toby is soon to be 2, and his birthday is next week.
Yeah. So how do you kind of manage that? So you're a teacher now, right? Working special education teacher.
Yes, sir.
How do you balance all of that with being a husband, being a dad, being a teacher, where you are investing so much in kids at school, and then also you're a volunteer leader here with the Relevant Community Church? How do you balance all that? Because that's a lot to put on one person. So how do you deal with that?
I think there's this phrase where it takes a village, but I think that's not just for kids, it's for all of us. I think God gives us our people, and I think God works through who we love. And my wife Megan is a great organizer of time, where I can't recall what I did last week. I can't recall what I did last Thursday, but my wife she's so good at organizing our family. I would just say that I'm not very good with balance. I'm kind of if I'm at school, I'm investing 100% in school. If I'm I kind of have my boxes that I live in, and I really struggle with balancing those different tasks of life. That's why I think God just gives you people to help you with those things. My strengths are not organizing time, where Megan's strengths are, responsibility, deliberative. That's her wheelhouse. So I would just say, I'm getting better at those things, but I just rely on people that God has given me to help out in those areas.
Yeah, I really. Jeremy was here for the first episode, and I really liked what he had to say about it, where he said, there's really work-life balance is not really a thing.
For sure.
It's more about work-life integration.
100%.
And for him, I think they've done a great job as a family of managing that, where, he talked about when they were growing up, or when their kids were growing up, and he was traveling a lot, that they would work together as husband and wife to get their kids excited about, here's what dad's going out to do today. Here's who he's going to invest in today. Here's where he's going. And getting your kids, and then also having the support from your spouse about what you're doing, getting them excited about it, so that it's not draining. It's not
Right.
taking away from that, but it's more about bringing those two things together.
Right.
And I would imagine you and Megan kind of do that in terms of getting excited about what you get to do here with Relevant, or
Sure.
getting your kids excited about getting involved and stuff like that.
And I think too, like that work-life integration is key, I think. And I think for Megan and I, we always talk about like when and how can we slow time down in those moments where it really matter. Megan and I, we're always convicted by like even being fully present with our kids when we have the opportunity. Like our cell phones are the biggest distractors on the planet. And if I can go back to flip phones for everybody, like bring back T9, like I would totally go. I'd do that in a heartbeat.
I wouldn't mind that either. I think that would be nice.
I'm okay pressing A 3 times for C. I don't care. But I think, just being fully present. Like we do a morning breakfast with our crew every morning, and we let our kids pick out a cereal bar or Lucky Charms or Fruit Loops, whatever they want to pick. And that's where we get to kind of sit down at the table and start our mornings off right and ask those kind of like those questions about, are you excited for school today? Are you excited to go see Miss Lisa today at daycare? Those kind of things,
Right.
Totally gets to sit on your lap. So I think just that work-life balance comes when you celebrate God in the small moments of life where, like wrestling with my kids. Like, I don't know why, but I love throwing my kids in the air 30 feet in the air. And it's not safe. It is not safe at all. But I love just like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's the age where you can pick on them and tickle them, and they just, they just laugh, cry, they fart. It's just like, it's just
Kids be kids.
Yeah. It's just kids be kids. So I think just, slowing time down to appreciate those things and quit being distracted by the things that, really don't matter.
Mm-hmm. So how did you and Megan get involved here with Relevant? How did you get plugged into this church? And then I know you're deeply involved with youth ministry here with Relevant. How did you and Megan get plugged into all this?
So my wife and I got married, and we bought a house here in Elkhorn. And so we were Googling churches in Elkhorn. And we found the Relevant website online, and we just were like, man, let's look at kind of what this all stands for, their belief statement or whatever it was. We looked at the website, and we just were totally like, let's just try it. The first one we saw, we're just going to give it a shot. I had come from a Methodist. I'm kind of a mutt when it comes to like faith. I grew up Catholic. Jody and I were Lutherans. I tried a Methodist church for a while. So I just was kind of, let's just try, let's give it a shot, And so I'll never forget our first gathering we went to Indian Creek. This was 8 years ago. I want to believe. Maybe I'm wrong. 8 years. We'll say 8. We'll say 9.
For most of the time that Relevant's been around, then.
Yeah, for most of the time.
About 10 years.
Yeah. So we walked into Indian Creek. We sat back third. We were kind of just checking it out. And I come from a Catholic background, and the screens are up on the front, and people have their hands up in the air. I'm kind of like, oh man, this is a big deal, But Megan, during, I think it was the second worship song, I can't recall what song it was, and Megan looked at me and she had tears in her eyes. And I just kind of go, well, how you feeling? And she said, I'm doing okay. That was pretty powerful for me, because we were looking for really this next step in our faith, and this next step in like, we're a family now. We got to have God in the fold. We got to have Christ in the fold of what we're doing. And so yes, we just started coming to Relevant full time, and actually the first Sunday we went, we met at there was not a starting point, but I can't remember what they called it. But we went to Schloss's house, and we talked with Ronnie and a couple.
You used to have that lunch at every quarter or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That was our first one, and we're like, well, let's go to that. So we went to that,
Yeah.
and met Abe and Jimmy and a couple other people, and that were there for the first time, and so that was kind of our in. And then I met Ashley, and if you guys know Ashley Wietrich's our next gen director, and she's just an incredible person. And so I met Ashley, and I was like, hey, I want to volunteer. So she hooked me up with a couple observations. So I observed and kind of like just helped out for a month, and then I jumped in with 5th graders and 4th graders and just loved it. And so and that's kind of where it all started.
It's crazy to think about you observing, because I know when I first got plugged into Relevant a couple of years ago, I observed you and then Ashley's husband, Josh. That was who I observed when I first got plugged in. Now here we are. And now here we are.
And now you're my group.
Yeah, I guess technically, coach, whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
You are
Circle
my
life, man.
Yeah, man. Hey, man, I'm cool with it.
So
I look up to you.
No, you don't. That's all right, though. So you were teaching for a while, and then you kind of had, and you've been plugged into Relevant for a few years at this point, and you kind of had that stirring that
Yeah.
maybe you wanted to make a change in your career
Yeah.
and do something else. So how did that play out?
Yeah. There was an opening here at Relevant for the middle school director, and I had been with the middle school ministry now for, I think, I don't know how many years that had been at this point, but I just kind of, I would go home at night after school, and all I would think about was Relevant in this job. All I would think about was, like, as youth pastor, like that's a pretty cool thing to be able to invest in kids like that. And it just wouldn't leave me, and I kind of prayed over it, and I asked Megan about it, and I think, I drove Ashley and Ronnie nuts probably with all my questions and all my concerns and all of my stuff that I was trying to work through with that. But they were so patient and willing to answer questions that I had. The whole team was. And so, after just praying about it and thinking about it and talking with my wife about it, we decided that we would give it a shot. So,
and so you became the director of our middle school ministry,
Yep.
Rooted, right?
Yep.
And you did that for about a year,
Yep.
I believe.
Yes, sir.
And loved it, right? It was great.
Every minute.
What was it like with having that role as the leader of that ministry and having that role of being involved in students' lives that way?
Yeah.
How did you kind of see God work through middle schoolers' lives in that period of time? I mean, I know you're still involved as a volunteer leader now, but particularly in that role, how did you see God work through students' lives?
I think it's amazing when for me, like my brain is so ingrained into the role of a small group leader and what a small group leader does with their crew. Like they're 8, like they're few. Like this is like, you're kind of a pastor to your 8 or 10 kids, and to see God move in small group leaders and volunteers that really do, like, they want to see the next generation know Jesus and be able to, like, to share that message with their friends. When you see like 15, 16, 17 small group leaders that come every single weekend to love on kids like that, that's an amazing thing. And as a small group leader in that mindset, like, we need to tell kids, we need to prove to our kids that we see them, and that we don't just see them and like their Instagram posts. That's not like what I'm talking about. Like when we see our kids, it's like we know what they're interested in, we know their strengths. We create an environment where they're willing to share some weaknesses that they have, or some questions they might have, or some doubts they might have. And seeing God move with small group leaders, being able to peel away some of those doubts or be able to answer some of those questions, that to me is an amazing process. And that to me, I mean, watching leaders invest for that moment when a kid is going to finally, the whole point is like, hey, Mr. Nate, or hey, when I hear a kid at VBS, when I hear a kid from Rooted say, I'm ready to put my faith in Jesus, like my heart punches me in the face, and it's just like this amazing thing, So did I answer your question? I don't know if I did or not.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I want to kind of dig into that a little bit more too, in terms
sure.
of, you talked about how kids need to be seen nowadays, and not just, like you said, social media or even just things that they're interested in, but just them as a person.
Right.
In this day and age, young people obviously have so many different directions to go in.
For sure.
And
For sure.
I think even just getting them to show up in these youth environments that we want to get them in, to get to know them, to invest in them, to help them experience their full potential. When they have so many different directions, how do you encourage people in that? How do you encourage them with all the different things that they face? Like you talked about growing up in Smallton, Iowa, the things that you had to deal with as a young person in that type of environment, in that generation, totally different from what
100%.
young people are experiencing now.
Right.
How do you encourage young people with everything that they're dealing with right now?
Yeah. Well, I think I think it goes back to, the first thing I would say is I see you. I see your strengths, I see your weaknesses, I see your vulnerabilities. Like I'm, here to support you in those things. I think too, like, kids need to know that they have purpose. And I think a lot of times kids, like, like a middle school kid is in love with someone in their school, and you don't know what love is yet. Or it's like, come on, like, all they know of love is what they are currently experiencing, with that emotion. And I think just every middle school kid has a purpose. Every middle school kid is designed for a reason. And I think their place where they are, whether it's Elkhorn Middle School, Grandview, wherever they're at, I think God's put them there for a reason. And so to tell kids that, like, you're not just a middle school kid, like you are the church. You can serve on Sunday mornings. You can be a part of a ministry team that's with adults. Like, I think just the ability to challenge kids in those ways, give them kind of sight of what's to come, if you will. So,
How do you encourage parents to be involved in that process? I know with our youth ministries, we try to work with parents a lot.
Yep.
But what's your advice to parents for investing in their kids and parenting their kids, and not just being a friend to kids or however you want to call it, but being that example in their lives, that good example in their lives? How do you help them do that?
Yeah, I mean, as a parent myself, I cannot wait for the day when I can take Eli and Emma and Toby on a service trip, or be able to serve, at a church function with them. I just, the ability, the family is a powerful thing, and God's created the family, for amazing. It's just an amazing design when you think about the family itself. I think doing family together is a big thing. And so I'm not really the one to always be able to give advice to parents, but I would just say, like, God, such a great question. But just being like, your kids love something, love it with them. I think if your kids, like, want to play baseball, like, dude, dig in with them. Like, if you don't know how to play baseball, find out. Like, I think just love what they love and show interest in what they're interested in, and just invest in those things. I would say that's definitely step one.
Yeah. So I want to kind of land this by coming back to something that we talked about in the beginning, because you served in that role as the director of middle school ministry for a year, and then you felt the call to go back to being a teacher because you felt like that was where you were really meant to be, or really called to be, at least during this season. And now you're back to working with students with special needs. And along the same line of what we talked about in the intro, it seems like you are able to understand and relate with people like that in this day and age, when unfortunately a lot of people don't understand that, and a lot of people don't know, even if they desire to understand that, they just can't. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to relate to them, or make them feel involved, make them feel loved. Now that you're back in this role as a special education teacher, how does that play out for you? And on the flip side of that, how do you see God playing out in those situations as well, in terms of how he works through those students that you work with every day?
Yeah. So I've taught for, this is my 13th year teaching total, 14th year teaching. I taught for 2 years in inner city Omaha. I've taught for 12 years in Papillion. I have the scale of what I've taught kids and what they've taught me, like, that scale is totally, like, the kids that I work with every day, and the challenges they overcome every day, is unbelievable. I work with kids that have, they use wheelchairs for mobility. Maybe they use a device to communicate. Maybe they, have a certain disability that they can't walk, or they whatever it is. Like, their challenges, and they walk every day, and their ability to love, their ability to impact our community, their ability to learn and to grow and to just be a part of something bigger than themselves. Like, they don't, like, how do I word this? Like, they don't lack the ability, they don't lack the drive, they don't lack the motivation. Like, they take life on 110%, and they really don't pay attention to what others think of them. And that's what I think I love most about special education, is that they are unabridged. Students that have a special need, or students that have a certain challenge, like, they are unabridged, and they just live life who they are. And it's so refreshing for me to work with that kind of student. And I love working, like, at Papillion South. Like, our team of teachers is incredible. We have some young educators who really love kids, and they motivate me as well every day. I just see God in those relationships. I see God in the inclusive culture that we're setting for people with all abilities. I think for a long time, you're seen just as a kid who has a wheelchair, or you're seen just by, whatever disability you have. I think God is taking this generation and really molding them into like, let's truly see people for who they really are. It's not just a kid in a wheelchair. Like, this kid has certain strengths and abilities that we need to learn more about. I think this generation is truly embracing that inclusive nature, and it's really cool for me to kind of walk into that culture where kids are taking this thing on, and it's not just adults preaching at kids; it's really kids doing it. That's what I would say I see God moving in our current generation the most.
Yeah.
So,
Nate, thank you for being here.
Yeah.
I appreciate your heart. I know we kind of josh each other a little bit, but I look up to you, and
It's mutual.
You're a huge friend to me, and I admire just like we talked about. I just admire the way that you serve Megan, that you serve your kids, that you're there for your kids, but then also you are here, and you're just sold out for serving others and loving others in the church, and then also in your job, and we need more people like you, and so I appreciate you being here so that we can share your story.
Thank
I
you.
think your story is going to connect with a lot of people, so thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And for those of you listening and watching, I think you heard in Nate's story that a lot of ways that we advance through life is through next steps. And here at Relevant, we talk a lot about the best way to follow Jesus in a practical sense is with one next step at a time. And so I just want to ask you, what's your next step? I think a lot of us know what that is without even thinking about it. Once we just present that question to ourselves and think about it, I think we already have that thing in mind. And for some of you, I think that's maybe you need to get plugged into a church for the first time, or plugged into a church again. Maybe you've been hurt by the church, and I'm sorry to hear that, but I can tell you that God loves you, that God wants to know you, and that he has so much for you both here and now and in eternity. And so if you want to get plugged into a church and you're in the Omaha metro area or even in the surrounding areas, we would love to connect with you. If you want to come to the Relevant Center and join us for one of our Sunday morning gatherings with Relevant Community Church, you can do that. You can plan your visit right now at relevantcommunity.org. That's our website. We also just recently started doing live streaming on our Facebook page of our Sunday morning gatherings. So certainly check that out as well if you feel more comfortable with doing that. But we would certainly love to have you here at the Relevant Center. We'd love to meet you and to see your smiling face and to hear a little bit more about your story. Maybe that's your next step, but maybe your next step is also that you've been wrestling with this Jesus thing for a long time, and you are maybe ready to put your faith in Jesus today. And you can do that right where you're at today. Nate talked about how that came about for him, and it was very simple. He just prayed to himself, prayed silently to God, and just poured his heart out to him, and just told Jesus how he felt and that he wants to put his full faith and full trust in him. And you can do that right where you're at today. There's no special words, there's no special prayer. Just tell him how you feel and tell him that you want to make him the leader of your life and the forgiver of your sins. And if you decide to do that today, we would love to hear about that from you. You can connect with us on our social media. You can also send us an email, yourstory@relevantcommunity.org. We'd love to answer any questions, comments that you may have. We'd love to hear about that. Continue to like and subscribe and follow to all of our channels, Spotify, iTunes, YouTube. You can find the links on our Facebook page or also on our website. We have a Your Story podcast page on the website. Continue to follow us and connect with us there. We'll have more episodes of Your Story coming your way very soon. We're going to be hopefully putting out new episodes every month. That's kind of our plan, so stay tuned for that. And just remember, this is real life. This is real transformation, and this is your story. Thank you for joining us today. Nate, thank you. Appreciate it.
Love you, man.
Love you too.
That's awesome.